Alright, so I actually added some clip properties and set up the foot locking, and also made these guys use the locomotion instead, just to make it look a little bit nicer. But what I also did is I added this little cannon here. So first thing I want to do is I want to add some tracer fire to this. Let's first go into the gun. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do some particles that gets shot out from this cannon. And if we look at the cannon here, I'm going to make one of the polygons here an emitter. To do that, I'm going to drop down a group. I'm going to call this emitter. And then I'm going to click this little arrow here. And then I'm going to select this little polygon here. And enter. Well, the next thing I'm going to do is to create a geometry for the tracer fire. Tracer fire. And let's go in here. Now I want this emitter, so I'm gonna do an object merge. And let's hide everything. And I'm gonna import this cannon. So I'm gonna go to this out cannon. So now I have the cannon, and now I just want to blast away everything except the emitter. So I'm gonna drop down a blast here. Gonna select the group emitter, and then I'm gonna select this delete non-selected. So now I have this geometry that is following the cannon. Cool. Now I'm gonna drop down a DOP-sim, and I'm gonna connect this to the first port here. And let's go in here, and I'm gonna drop down a pop solver, and then I'm gonna drop down a pop object. It's quite similar to the crowd solver. Instead of a crowd solver, you have this pop solver, because we're just gonna deal with points here. And instead of the crowd object, we have a pop object. And now, as you might have guessed, we're going to have a pop source instead of a crowd source. Let's connect that to the second one here. And then for this emission type, scatter on surface is perfect. Geometry source, first context geometry. And now we can see that it is emitting, but the particles aren't moving at all. So we need to give them some velocity. To decide what velocity we're going to have, I'm actually going to use the normal from this primitive. So first I'm going to make sure that I have a normal on the primitive, so I'm going to drop down a normal here. And now we're going to have a primitive. And then I'm going to drop down a wrangle here. And I'm going to set at v. And v then is velocity. And I don't need to tell Houdini that this is a vector, because this is a known attribute. Like I said, the velocity is equal to the normal. And the same thing with the normal here. You can see that immediately something happened. You can see they popped up a little bit. And that is just because by default, this pop source in attributes use inherited velocity. And as I just set the velocity on the emitter to the normal, the particles will travel in that direction. But I want them to be a bit faster. So let's put this up to 50. So now it's a little bit faster. And I'm also going to do two other things. One thing is that I don't want this many particles. I maybe want 10. Another thing is the first frame is so far off from the cannon already. What I can do then is to use this jitter birth time to have the particles get a random age within the current time step, and in that way not have them all start at the same position. And then you see that is getting closer to the cannon here. This is a little bit better. Cool. Right, so let's go out again. So I don't just want it to be point. Let's see here are the zombies. I'm gonna make something more tracer fire like, so let's drop down a copy to point. And then I'm also gonna drop down a tube. And I can see I'm copying tubes, but maybe not like how we wanted to copy them. First of all, let's put down a transform. I'm just gonna rotate this tube here to 90. So now it's pointing in the right direction. Actually, I'm gonna do minus 90. Then I'm gonna do the scale. I'm gonna take that down to here somewhere, maybe. And then I'm gonna put this to 0. And I'm also gonna put a color to this, like so. Another thing, actually I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. So let's put this to 0.5 maybe. Something like this. And I can put on this end caps too. Otherwise it would just be hollow. And the last thing I'm going to do is I want to make these pack primitives. In the copy to points, I'm going to check this pack and instance. True. Alright, so here is our tracer fire.